When I became a Texas State Trooper, I thought I knew what I was getting into. But out here, in the quiet expanse of rural Texas, there's a different kind of law. A law whispered between veterans, a warning about the territory and its old ways. Tonight, I'm sharing the chilling, true encounters that taught me some suspects are best left unpursued. My name is Cole Hendricks, and 3 years ago, I graduated top of my class at the Texas Department of Public Safety Training Academy in Austin. I remember the pride swelling in my chest as I accepted my badge, the weight of it feeling like destiny finally taking shape. I had studied every protocol, memorized every statute, and trained for every conceivable scenario. I was ready, or so I believed. My first assignment came in the form of a manila envelope slid across a desk by a personnel officer who wouldn't meet my eyes. District 47B. The name meant nothing to me at the time. When I asked about it, the officer simply said, "Remote posting." They needed fresh blood. There was something in the way he said "needed" that should have warned me, but I was too eager, too hungry to prove myself. The drive to my new station took 7 hours from Austin. The last 2 of those hours carried me through a landscape that seemed to belong to another world entirely. The hill country gave way to something flatter, more barren. The mesquite trees grew sparse and twisted, their branches reaching toward the sky like arthritic fingers. The towns became smaller, their names painted on water towers that hadn't seen fresh paint in decades. Eventually, even those disappeared. I arrived at the Medina County substation just as the sun was setting. The building was a single-story structure of faded brick, its parking lot containing exactly 3 vehicles. 2 dusty patrol cars and an ancient pickup truck that looked like it hadn't moved in years. The Texas flag hung limp from a pole out front, not a breath of wind to stir it. The silence was the first thing that truly unsettled me. Not quiet. Silence. The kind that presses against your eardrums and makes you aware of your own heartbeat. Inside, I met Captain Vernon, a heavy-set man with a mustache that belonged in a different century. He welcomed me with a handshake that was all business and no warmth. "Hendricks," he said, looking me over. "They told me you were coming. Got your field training officer waiting." He gestured toward a door at the back of the room. "Ray Dawkins. 32 years on these roads. You listen to him. You hear me? Whatever he tells you, you do. No questions." I nodded, confused by the emphasis he placed on those words. At the academy, we were trained to question everything, to think critically, to never follow orders blindly. But something in Captain Vernon's eyes made me swallow my textbook response. Ray Dawkins was waiting by one of the patrol cars when I stepped outside. He was tall and lean, somewhere in his late 50s, with the kind of face that looked like it had been carved by wind and sun and time. His eyes were the color of faded denim, and they studied me with an intensity that made me feel like a specimen under glass. He didn't offer his hand. "You the new one," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, sir. Cole Hendricks. Looking forward to learning from you." Ray made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Learning. Yeah." He opened the driver's side door. "Get in. We start at sundown." The patrol car was a standard-issue Crown Victoria, but older than anything I had seen at the academy. The radio crackled with static, even though no one was transmitting. As Ray pulled out of the lot, I noticed him touch something hanging from the rearview mirror, a small bundle of dried herbs bound with red string. He saw me looking and said nothing. We drove in silence for nearly an hour. The roads narrowed, the pavement crumbling at the edges before giving way to caliche and gravel. The headlights carved a tunnel through darkness, so complete it seemed solid. Out here, there were no streetlights, no distant glow of civilization. Just the road, the brush, and the stars overhead that seemed impossibly close. "First rule," Ray finally said, his voice making me jump after so long in silence. "You don't ask questions on the first night. You watch. You listen. You keep your observations to yourself." I wanted to ask why, but something made me hold my tongue. Perhaps it was the weight of the darkness pressing against the windows. Perhaps it was the way Ray's knuckles had whitened on the steering wheel. We passed a road marker that indicated we were entering an unincorporated stretch of land. The map on my phone showed nothing but empty space. No towns, no landmarks, no indication that anything existed out here at all. When I looked up from my screen, I noticed that Ray had slowed the car considerably. "Put that away," he said, nodding at my phone. "It won't help you out here. Signal's dead, and the maps don't show what matters anyway." I pocketed the phone and focused on the road ahead. That's when I saw it. A dirt road branching off to our left, barely visible through the scrub. As we approached, Ray suddenly accelerated, keeping his eyes locked forward. "What about that road?" I asked before I could stop myself. Ray's jaw tightened. "What about it? Shouldn't we be patrolling it? Could be anything out there." For a long moment, Ray didn't answer. When he spoke, his voice had dropped to something barely above a whisper. "That road isn't ours to patrol. Nobody goes down that road. Not us. Not anybody with sense." I waited for elaboration, but none came. We continued our patrol in silence, passing through landscape that seemed to repeat itself endlessly. Empty fields, abandoned structures, the occasional cluster of cattle that watched us pass with eyes that reflected our headlights like pale mirrors. Just past midnight, the radio crackled to life. A dispatcher's voice, distant and warped by static, reported a possible disabled vehicle on Route 7. Ray acknowledged the call and turned us around. We found the vehicle easily enough. A late-model sedan pulled onto the shoulder, its hazard lights blinking. A woman stood beside it, waving as we approached. Standard stuff. This was a job I had trained for. Ray pulled up behind the sedan, but didn't get out. He just sat there, staring at the scene ahead of us. The woman continued to wave, but there was something about her movements. They were too consistent, too rhythmic, like a recording playing on loop. "Aren't we going to help her?" I asked, my hand already on the door handle. "Look at her shadow," Ray said. I looked. The woman stood in the glow of her hazard lights, which should have cast her shadow in shifting patterns of orange and dark. But her shadow wasn't moving. It stretched out behind her, long and black against the gravel, and it wasn't her shadow at all. The shape was wrong. Too tall, too thin, and it had arms that bent in directions that human arms couldn't bend. "What?" I started. Ray threw the car into reverse. We backed up 100 yards before he turned us around and accelerated into the night. In the rearview mirror, I watched the woman. She had stopped waving. She was just standing there, her head slowly rotating to follow our retreat. No, not rotating. Her head was on backwards. My heart hammered against my ribs. I opened my mouth to speak, to demand answers, to process what I had just witnessed. But Ray cut me off. "Second rule," he said, his voice steady despite everything. "Some calls aren't calls. Some vehicles aren't vehicles. And some people standing by the road aren't people at all." We drove until dawn, and Ray never explained what we had seen. He didn't need to. The image of that shadow, of that woman with her head slowly turning the wrong direction, was burned into my memory. When we finally pulled back into the substation, the sun was climbing over the horizon, and I realized I had survived my first night. Ray killed the engine and sat there for a moment. Then he looked at me with those faded eyes and said something that has haunted me ever since. "You did good tonight, rookie. Didn't panic. Didn't run toward it like the last one did." He paused. "The last one didn't come back. I wanted to ask what happened to my predecessor. I wanted to demand explanations, protocols, anything that would make sense of this madness. But I remembered the first rule. No questions on the first night. So I just nodded, got out of the car, and walked into the substation on legs that felt like water. Captain Vernon was waiting with fresh coffee. He took one look at my face and knew. "He took you past the hollow road, didn't he?" Vernon asked. I nodded. Vernon sighed and handed me the coffee. "Welcome to District 47B, Trooper Hendricks. Get some sleep. Tonight's going to be worse." I didn't sleep that first day. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that woman's head rotating on her neck like a broken doll, the shadow behind her stretching impossibly long. When night fell again, I was running on coffee and something deeper. Maybe fear. Maybe the stubborn refusal to believe what I had witnessed was real. Ray was already waiting by the patrol car when I stepped outside. He looked at me with something that might have been approval. "You came back," he said. "Was there a choice?" "There's always a choice." He opened the driver's door. "Most people just don't have the spine to make the wrong one." We pulled out of the station and into another night that swallowed everything beyond our headlights. This time, Ray broke the silence sooner. "I'm going to teach you the rules," he said. "Not the ones in your training manual. The real ones. The ones that will keep you alive out here." I nodded, grateful for any framework that might help me understand this place. Rule 1. Certain roads are off limits. I'll show you which ones. You don't drive down them. You don't pull anyone over on them. You don't respond to calls that come from them, no matter what dispatch says. "What if there's an emergency?" I asked. Ray's eyes never left the road. "There are no emergencies on those roads. Not the kind we can help with anyway." We drove for another 20 minutes before he pointed to a faded wooden sign marking a turnoff. The sign read Deacon's Path, in letters so weathered they were barely visible. "That's one of them," Ray said. "See how the brush grows thicker around the entrance? How the road seems to disappear after just a few yards?" I looked. He was right. The darkness beyond that turnoff was different, denser. It seemed to absorb the light from our headlights rather than reflect it. "What happens if you go down there?" I asked. "People have tried. County investigators. Federal agents once, back in the 80s. Search parties." Ray's voice was flat. "None of them came back whole. Some of them came back without their faces." I felt my stomach lurch. Without their faces. Smooth skin where the features should be. Like someone erased them. Ray accelerated past the turnoff. We found one of them walking along Route 12 about 3 weeks after she went missing. Deputy Laura Vance. She walked 8 miles with no face before she finally collapsed. She was still breathing when the ambulance took her. Don't know if she's still breathing now. Nobody talks about it. The radio crackled with static, and Ray immediately reached over to lower the volume. "Don't listen to the static," he said. "Sometimes it sounds like voices. Sometimes it sounds like your name. Don't acknowledge it." We continued our patrol, passing through landscape that seemed unchanged from the night before. Same empty fields. Same twisted mesquite trees. Same suffocating darkness. Rule 2. Ray continued. Certain vehicles are never pulled over. Old pickup trucks, mostly. The kind with rust on the fenders and no license plates. You see one, you let it pass. You don't run the plates. You don't follow. Why not? Ray was quiet for a long moment. Because the people driving them aren't people. They're wearing people, but there's nothing human behind those eyes. They come from the territory. The deep territory. They have their own business out here, and as long as we don't interfere, they leave us alone. As if the universe wanted to prove his point, headlights appeared on the road ahead. They were dim and yellow, the kind of lights that belonged to vehicles from decades past. Ray immediately pulled to the shoulder and killed our headlights. "Don't look at the driver," he whispered. "Keep your eyes down." The vehicle approached slowly. I could hear its engine now, a rumbling growl that seemed too deep for any normal truck. Despite Ray's warning, I glanced up. The pickup was ancient. Its paint faded to a color that might have been blue or might have been gray. Rust covered the wheel wells like disease. The windows were down, and sitting in the driver's seat was a figure that made my blood run cold. It was shaped like a man. It wore clothes that might have been overalls or might have been something else entirely. But its proportions were wrong. Arms too long, torso too thin, and where its face should have been, there was just shadow. Not darkness. Shadow. A void that seemed to drink in the starlight. The truck passed us without slowing. I watched in the side mirror as its taillights disappeared around a curve. Ray exhaled. "Good. You kept quiet." He started the car again. Rule 3. Never pursue a suspect who runs into the brush. Not at night. Not ever. Why? Because the brush belongs to them. We patrol the roads. They patrol everything else. He emerged back onto the highway. Had a rookie once, 5 years before you. Name was Danny Whitmore. Called for backup during a traffic stop that went sideways. Said the suspect fled on foot into a mesquite thicket. Said he was going in after him. What happened? We found Danny's uniform hanging from a fence post about 2 miles from his last known location. Just a uniform. No Danny. No blood. No tracks. Like he just dissolved and left his clothes behind. Ray's hands tightened on the wheel. We found his badge a month later. It was in a bird's nest. A crow's nest. Don't know how it got there. The night continued like this. Ray dispensing rules like medication for a disease I was only beginning to understand. Don't respond to knocking on the car windows if no one's there. Don't stop for children walking alone after 3 a.m. If you see your own patrol car passing from the opposite direction, accelerate and don't look at the driver. By 4 a.m., my head was swimming. The landscape had taken on a surreal quality, like I was driving through a painting done by someone who hated their subject. The stars seemed wrong somehow. Too close. Arranged in patterns I didn't recognize from any astronomy class. That's when dispatch crackled to life. A report of a speeding vehicle on Route 19. Tan-colored sedan, erratic driving, possible DUI. Ray acknowledged the call and turned us toward the location. We spotted the vehicle within minutes. A Buick from the 90s, weaving between lanes at nearly 90 miles per hour. This one's real, Ray said. I can tell by the driving. Something real is always messy. We lit up the overheads and gave chase. The Buick accelerated briefly, then seemed to lose conviction. It pulled onto the shoulder, and we stopped behind it. Ray called him to stop while I ran the plates. They came back registered to an address in San Antonio. Normal car. Normal owner. I'll take this one, Ray said. You stay here and watch the brush. He approached the vehicle while I stayed by our car, scanning the darkness on either side of the road. The mesquite seemed to press closer here, branches intertwining to form a wall of thorns and shadow. I kept thinking I saw movement just beyond the tree line, shapes that resolved into nothing when I focused on them. The traffic stop took 15 minutes. Drunk driver, just as suspected. Ray cuffed him and walked him back to our car. As he loaded the man into the back seat, I noticed something peculiar. The drunk was mumbling, the way impaired people often do. But his words weren't slurred complaints or excuses. He was counting, over and over again. 7, 14, 21, 7, 14, 21. What's he counting? I asked Ray. Ray's face went pale. Get in the car. Now. We drove faster than was strictly safe for a road this dark. The drunk kept counting in the back seat, his voice rising and falling in a chant-like rhythm. Ray wouldn't explain, not until we reached the station and handed the man off to the booking officer. Only then, standing in the parking lot with dawn threatening the eastern horizon, did Ray speak. He wasn't counting, Ray said. He was marking intervals. Something was following us, something that comes in sets of 7. I looked back at the road we had traveled. In the distance, just visible against the lightening sky, I could see 7 shapes standing by the roadside. They were perfectly still, evenly spaced, and they were watching. They're gone by daylight, Ray said. But tonight, they'll remember that we were there. I didn't ask what would happen when they remembered. I didn't want to know, but I would find out soon enough. 2 weeks into my assignment at District 47B, and sleep had become a distant memory. Every night brought new horrors, new rules, new reminders that the world I thought I understood was nothing more than a thin membrane stretched over something vast and hungry. The phenomena were escalating. I could feel it like pressure building before a storm. It started with the lights. On patrol, I would catch glimpses of illumination in the empty fields. Not flashlights or headlights or campfires. These were cold lights, pale blue or sickly green, drifting across the landscape like lost spirits. Ray called them the travelers, though he wouldn't explain what they were traveling toward or from. Don't follow them, he said. Don't acknowledge them. They're looking for someone who'll look back. Then came the sounds. Howls that weren't wolves. Screams that weren't coyotes. Once, driving along a stretch of road I had patrolled dozens of times, I heard what sounded like a child laughing just beyond my window. The sound followed us for 3 miles before fading into the static of the radio. But worst of all was the feeling, the constant, inescapable sensation of being watched. I felt it everywhere now. In the station, in my apartment, in the shower. Eyes that I couldn't see but could always feel, tracking my movements, waiting for me to slip. Ray noticed a change in me. One night, as we began our patrol, he looked at me with something approaching sympathy. It gets easier, he said. Your mind learns to filter it out, like living next to train tracks. Eventually, you stop hearing the trains. What if the trains get louder? Ray didn't answer. He didn't need to. We both knew the trains were getting louder. That night, we received a call about suspicious activity near an abandoned ranch house on the outskirts of our patrol zone. It was technically within our jurisdiction, but as we approached, I noticed Ray's posture stiffen. We're close to the territory, he said. The territory? The deep territory, where the roads end and something else begins. He pulled off the main road and onto a dirt track that led toward the ranch house. Stay in the car when we get there. I mean it. The ranch house materialized from the darkness like a shipwreck rising from black water. It was a 2-story structure, its windows boarded over, its porch collapsed on one side. The remains of a windmill stood nearby, its blades frozen at odd angles. Ray parked the car and stepped out, leaving the engine running. I watched as he approached the house, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. He moved slowly, deliberately, like a man walking through a minefield. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then Ray stopped. He was standing at the base of the porch stairs, his flashlight pointed at something on the ground. Even from the car, I could see his shoulders slump. He walked back to the car and got in without a word. His face was the color of ash. What did you find? I asked. Teeth, he said. Human teeth, arranged in a circle around the porch. Should we call it in? Get forensics out here. Ray shook his head. The teeth are old. Decades old. Maybe longer. And they're arranged in a pattern I've seen before. He put the car in reverse. This is a boundary marker. We're not supposed to be here. Before I could respond, the radio crackled. Not with dispatch. With something else. A voice that seemed to come from very far away, speaking words that weren't quite words. Then, clearly and unmistakably, it said my name. Cole Hendricks. Ray slammed his hand down on the radio, killing the power. We sat in silence, the only sound the idling engine and our own ragged breathing. Don't acknowledge it, Ray whispered. Never acknowledge it. We drove away from the ranch house as fast as the road would allow. But as we passed the boundary of that property, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Standing on the porch of the abandoned house were 3 figures. They hadn't been there before. They stood perfectly still, their heads tilted at identical angles, watching us leave. I couldn't make out their features, but I knew somehow that they were smiling. The next night, Ray sat me down before a patrol. I need to tell you about the old ways, he said. Not everything, just enough so you understand what we're dealing with. I listened as he spoke. What he described was not in any textbook, not in any training manual. It was history that had been deliberately forgotten. Before the settlers came, before Texas was Texas, this land belonged to something else. Ray didn't name it. He said naming it was dangerous. But he described the agreements that had been made, the compromises. The territory had been divided. Certain areas remained untouched. In exchange, those who live here were allowed to continue living. The roads are ours, Ray said. That was the deal. We patrol the roads. We maintain order on the roads. But everything beyond the roads belongs to them. Who are they? Ray's expression darkened. Don't ask. Just know that they were here first, and they'll be here long after we're gone. That night, we received a routine call about a vehicle driving without headlights on Route 23. Standard stuff. We located the vehicle within minutes. An old pickup truck, tan-colored, moving at exactly the speed limit. I started to run the plates, but Ray grabbed my wrist. "Look at the road," he said. I looked. The pickup was crossing an intersection, one of several along a route. But as I watched, I realized something impossible. The pickup wasn't leaving any tire tracks. The dust on the road remained undisturbed despite the vehicle passing over it. Ray accelerated, pulling up alongside the truck. I looked over at the driver's window, expecting to see one of those faceless things from before. Instead, I saw myself, not a reflection, another me, sitting in the driver's seat of that ancient pickup. My face was blank, expressionless. But as I stared, that other Cole turned to look at me. His eyes were wrong. Black, completely black. He raised one hand and waved. The gesture was obscene in its normalcy. Then the pickup swerved sharply to the left, cutting across our path and vanishing down an unmapped trail that shouldn't have existed. Ray slammed on the brakes, so hard the car fishtailed. We came to rest sideways across the road, dust billowing around us. "That's not ours to chase," Ray said, his voice shaking. "Whatever that was, wherever it goes, it's not ours to follow." I sat there, my heart trying to escape through my throat. I had to see myself, or something wearing my face, or something showing me what I might become if I stayed out here long enough. "What was that?" I demanded. "What the hell was that?" Ray took a long breath. "The territory is testing you. It is that with new people. Shows them things. Makes them doubt. If you're strong, you ignore it. If you're weak." He trailed off. "If I'm weak, then you become what you saw. Another thing driving the old roads. Another piece of the territory." We finished our patrol in silence. When dawn came, I was grateful for the light in a way I had never been before. But the light didn't last. It never does. And I knew that whatever was watching me, whatever had worn my face, was waiting in the darkness for my next patrol. The territory was patient, and it had already started to claim me. The call came in at 2:47 a.m., exactly 3 weeks into my assignment. A frantic voice, barely coherent through the static, reporting an abandoned vehicle on Hollow Road. Hollow Road, one of the forbidden roads. The one Ray had shown me on my very first night. Ray and I exchanged a look. In 3 weeks, I had learned to read his expressions. This one was dread. "Dispatch, please confirm location," Ray said into the radio. The static cleared just enough for the dispatcher's voice to come through. "Hollow Road, mile marker 7. Caller reported a white sedan, doors open, no occupants visible. Caller stated she heard screaming before she drove past. Dispatch, Hollow Road is..." "I know what it is," the dispatcher interrupted. There was something in her voice. Fear, maybe, or resignation. "Captain Vernon says you have to check it out. We've got a missing persons report that might be connected. The sedan matches the description." Ray closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, something had hardened in his expression. "Copy that," he said. "We're en route." He hung up the radio and looked at me. "You don't have to come. I can drop you at the station." "No." The word came out before I had time to think about it. "I'm your partner." Ray almost smiled. "Almost. Then we do this together. And whatever happens, whatever you see, don't get out of the car unless I tell you to." We drove toward Hollow Road in silence. The night seemed darker than usual, the stars dimmer. As we approached the turnoff, I could feel something change in the air. The pressure dropped. My ears popped. The world outside our headlights seemed to shrink. The entrance to Hollow Road was marked by that same faded wooden sign I remembered from my first night. Deacon's Path. But in the glow of our headlights, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Carvings on the signpost. Symbols that weren't any alphabet I recognized. They seemed to shift and writhe in the light. Ray turned onto the road. The pavement ended almost immediately, giving way to hard-packed dirt. The brush closed in around us, mesquite and ocotillo pressing so close that branches scraped against the car. The sound was like nails dragging across a coffin lid. We drove for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. The odometer said we had traveled 2 miles, but my sense of distance insisted we had gone much further. The road twisted and turned in ways that defied the flat landscape I knew surrounded us. Then we saw it, the white sedan. It was exactly where dispatch had described. Mile marker 7, though the marker itself was so corroded it was barely readable. The sedan sat in the middle of the road, its doors hanging open like broken wings. The headlights were still on, casting yellow beams into the brush. Ray stopped our car about 30 yards back. He didn't turn off the engine. "I'm going to check it out," he said. "You stay here. Keep the car running. If I'm not back in 10 minutes, you drive. You don't look back. You don't stop until you reach the station." "Ray, that's an order, Hendricks." He got out of the car and walked toward the sedan. His flashlight beam joined the sedan's headlights, creating overlapping circles of illumination. I watched him move around the vehicle, checking inside, checking the trunk. He stopped. Even from 30 yards away, I could see him stiffen. He was looking at something in the trunk. His flashlight trembled in his hand. Then he turned and started walking back toward me. His pace was fast, too fast, almost running. He got back in the car and slammed the door. His face was pale, his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscles standing out. "What did you find?" I asked. "Clothes," he said. "A woman's clothes, folded neatly in the trunk. No body, no blood, just the clothes, arranged like she had laid them out to wear." "What does that mean?" Ray didn't answer immediately. He was staring past the sedan into the darkness beyond. I followed his gaze and felt my blood turn to ice. There were tracks in the dirt, footprints leading away from the sedan and into the brush. But they weren't normal footprints. They started human-sized, the kind of prints a woman in tennis shoes might leave. But as they continued, they changed. They grew larger, longer. The shape shifted from human to something else, something that walked on too many legs. The tracks ended abruptly about 50 feet from the sedan. Not faded, not covered, just ended, as if whatever had made them had simply ceased to exist, or had risen into the air. "We need to go back," I said. "We need to call this in." "No." Ray's voice was hollow. "There's something I have to show you first. Something you need to understand." He put the car in drive and steered around the abandoned sedan. We continued down Hollow Road, deeper into territory that felt increasingly wrong. The air grew thick and heavy. The radio emitted nothing but static now, a constant hiss that seemed to breathe. After another mile, the road ended at a clearing. In the center of that clearing stood the remains of a building. Not a house, something older. Stone walls half crumbled, a foundation that had been laid when Texas was still part of Mexico. Ray stopped the car and killed the engine. The silence that followed was absolute. In 1847, Ray said, his voice barely above a whisper, a group of settlers came to this land. 20 families. They were looking for a new start. They found this territory instead. He pointed at the ruined building. That was their church. They built it in the first month. They thought it would protect them. What happened? The territory didn't want them. The things that lived here, the things that had always lived here, they gave the settlers a choice. Leave or die. But the settlers were stubborn. They were righteous. They believed their God was stronger than anything that dwelled in the darkness. Ray's hands were trembling. They were wrong. He told me the rest of the story in fragments, as if the words themselves were dangerous. The settlers had tried to fight. They had tried to cleanse the land with fire and prayer. In response, the territory had shown them what true darkness looked like. By the end of that first winter, only 3 settlers remained. They made a deal, not with God, with something else. They would protect the territory, keep outsiders away, enforce the boundaries. In exchange, they would be allowed to live. Those 3 settlers founded what would become this county. Ray said, their descendants still live here. Some of them know the truth. Most have forgotten. But the deal remains. The territory still demands its due. What does that mean? What does the territory want? Ray looked at me with ancient, exhausted eyes. The same thing it's always wanted. Respect, recognition, and occasionally a tribute. I thought about the missing woman, the folded clothes, the tracks that changed and then vanished. She was a tribute, not intentionally, but she drove down this road. She entered the territory. Once you're in, there's only one way to leave. Ray gestured at the ruins. The church was supposed to be a sanctuary. Instead, it became a gate. Things come through there. Things that shouldn't exist. And anyone who gets too close becomes part of the territory's collection. The radio suddenly crackled to life. The static cleared, and a voice spoke. It was the voice of a woman. Young, terrified. Please help me. I'm still here. I'm still here, but I'm changing. Please. The voice cut off. The static returned. Ray reached over and turned off the radio. We need to leave now. As if in response to his words, the darkness around the clearing began to move. Shapes separated themselves from the shadows. Tall, thin, wrong. They stepped into the edge of our headlight beams and stopped, watching. There were 7 of them. Of course there were 7. Ray started the engine and threw the car into reverse. We backed down Hollow Road at speeds that should have killed us. The shapes followed, their movement smooth and wrong, always staying just at the edge of our lights. We reached the turnoff and spun onto the main road. Behind us, I could see the shapes stop at the boundary of Hollow Road. They stood there, 7 sentinels, and watched us flee. One of them waved, the same gesture that thing wearing my face had made. Goodbye. Or perhaps, see you soon. It has been 3 years since that night on Hollow Road. 3 years of patrols, of silence, of learning to live alongside things that should not exist. I am no longer the eager rookie who arrived at District 47B with textbooks and idealism. I am something else now, something shaped by the darkness I patrol. Ray Dawkins retired 6 months after he took me to the clearing. He said he had done his duty. He had passed on the knowledge, prepared the next generation. When I asked where he was going, he just smiled that thin, tired smile and said, somewhere with streetlights. I haven't heard from him since. Part of me hopes he found peace. Another part suspects that the territory doesn't let anyone truly leave. Captain Vernon is still at the station, though he looks older every time I see him. We don't talk about what I know now. We don't need to. The understanding passes between us like electricity, silent and dangerous. I have my own rookie now. His name is Emmett Walsh, fresh from the academy, full of questions and confidence. I see myself in him, the version of myself that existed before Hollow Road, before the territory showed me its teeth. Tonight, I will begin teaching him the rules. We pull out of the station as the sun disappears below the horizon. The darkness spreads across the landscape like spilled ink, filling every hollow and crevice. Emmett sits in the passenger seat, his uniform still stiff with newness, his eyes bright with anticipation. So what's it really like out here? He asks. They didn't tell us much at the academy, just that it was remote. I think about how to answer. How do you explain that the world has more layers than anyone suspects? That beneath the surface of reality, there are things that watch and wait and hunger. It's quiet. I say finally. You'll learn to appreciate the quiet. We drive in silence for a while. The familiar roads unroll before us. Each curve and straightaway, now mapped in my memory. I know which stretches are safe. I know which ones require caution. I know the places where the territory reaches closest to our world. At 11 p.m., we pass the turnoff for Hollow Road. Emmett doesn't notice it. Most people don't. The territory has a way of making itself invisible to those who haven't been initiated. But I see it. I always see it now. The faded sign. The symbols that writhe in the darkness. The sense of something vast and patient waiting just beyond the threshold. We continue our patrol. The hours pass in that strange, stretched way they always do out here. Time means less in the territory shadow. Minutes can feel like hours. Hours can vanish in an instant. At 2 a.m., we receive a call about a suspicious vehicle on Route 19. An old pickup truck, driving without headlights. Emmett reaches for the radio. Should I acknowledge? Not yet. I slow the car, scanning the road ahead. Tell me what you see. The pickup materializes from the darkness. Tan-colored, rust on the fenders. No license plate. It moves at exactly the speed limit. Its engine producing that deep, wrong rumble I have come to know so well. Should we pull it over? Emmett asks. I think about how to explain. In 3 years, I have learned that the rules Ray taught me were just the beginning. There are deeper rules, older rules, that reveal themselves only with time. The territory doesn't just demand respect. It demands understanding, recognition, acknowledgement that we are guests in a place that belongs to something far older than humanity. No, I say, we let this one pass. Emmett frowns, but it's clearly violating several traffic codes. No headlights, no plates. Some vehicles aren't vehicles. I say, echoing Ray's words from my first night. Some drivers aren't drivers. You'll learn to tell the difference. The pickup passes us, and I catch a glimpse of the driver, or what passes for a driver, a shape of shadow and suggestion, its form flickering like a bad signal. It doesn't look at us, doesn't acknowledge us. It simply continues on whatever errand the territory has assigned it. Emmett is quiet for a long time after that. I can see him processing, trying to fit what he witnessed into his understanding of the world. That understanding will break soon. It has to. The world he believed in cannot contain what exists out here. The rest of the night passes without incident. We handle a routine call about a noise complaint from one of the isolated ranches. We assist a stranded motorist, a real one this time, whose car had broken down on Route 7. Normal work, human work. But between those moments, I catch Emmett staring into the darkness beyond our headlights. He's starting to see it, the way the shadows move, the shapes that flicker at the edge of vision, the sense of something watching. At 5 a.m., as the first hints of dawn begin to lighten the eastern sky, we pull over at a lookout point I discovered during my second year. It offers a view of the entire valley, a sea of darkness dotted with the occasional distant light. I turn off the engine. For a moment, we sit in silence. What is this place? Emmett finally asks. His voice is small, uncertain. What's really out there? I think about the 7 figures on Hollow Road, the woman who became a tribute, the thing that wore my face, the church that became a gate, the territory that demands its due. Something old, I say, something that was here before the roads, before the settlers, before any of us. It has its own laws, its own justice, its own way of keeping balance. And we just accept that. I look at him. In his eyes, I see the same struggle I went through. The desire to fight, to resist, to impose human order on something fundamentally inhuman. We don't accept it. I say, we respect it. There's a difference. I start the car again and turn us back toward the station. The sun is rising now, painting the landscape in shades of gold and amber. In the light, Texas looks beautiful, normal, a land of open spaces and endless possibility. But I know what waits beneath that surface. I know what prowls the darkness when the sun sets. I know that the roads are ours, but only the roads, and that the price of forgetting that is higher than anyone should have to pay. Emmett will learn, or he won't. That's not up to me. My job is to teach him the rules, to guide him through his first encounters, to prepare him for the reality that lies beyond the badge. What he does with that knowledge is his choice. We pull into the station as full daylight arrives. Captain Vernon is waiting with coffee, just as he waited for me 3 years ago. He looks at Emmett's pale face and knows. Took him past the border territory. Vernon asks me. I nod. Vernon sighs and hands Emmett a cup. Welcome to District 47B, Trooper Walsh. Get some sleep. Tonight's going to be worse. Emmett takes the coffee with trembling hands. I remember that feeling, the sense that the ground has shifted beneath your feet, that everything you believed was solid has turned to sand. But I also remember what comes after: the adaptation, the acceptance, the strange, terrible peace that comes from understanding your place in an order far older than humanity. I walk to my car and prepare to drive home. But before I leave, I pause in the parking lot and look out at the landscape. The sun is fully up now, the shadows banished until night returns. In the distance, I can see the hills that mark the edge of our patrol zone. Beyond those hills, the territory waits. It will always wait. That's what I've learned. The territory is patient. It has been here for millennia. It will be here long after we are gone. And as long as we respect its boundaries, as long as we follow the old ways, it allows us to exist in its shadow. I get in my car and drive toward home. In a few hours, the sun will set again. The darkness will return. And I will go back out onto those roads, patrolling the narrow strip of territory that humanity is allowed to claim. Some nights are quiet. Some nights bring encounters that test everything I've learned. Some nights, I see things that no training could prepare me for. But I always come back. I always continue. Because this is my job now. Not just enforcing human law, but maintaining an older covenant. Keeping the peace between what we are and what lurks in the darkness. I am Trooper Cole Hendricks. I work the night shift in rural Texas. And the rules I follow are more bizarre than anyone could imagine. But they are the rules. And out here, the rules are all that keep us alive. As I pull into my driveway, I notice something that makes me pause. A small bundle of dried herbs bound with red string, hanging from my porch light. I don't remember putting it there. I don't remember anyone visiting. But I know what it means. The territory knows where I live. It has always known. This is its way of reminding me that the covenant goes both ways. I protect its boundaries. It allows me to exist. I take the bundle inside and hang it by my door. Then I close my eyes and try to sleep, knowing that in a few hours, the darkness will call me back. And I will answer. I always answer. Because that's the job. That's the life I chose. And somewhere out there, in the vast and ancient darkness of rural Texas, something is waiting to see if I continue to keep my end of the bargain. So far, I have. I intend to keep it that way.